1. So I'm a sophomore in high school. I transferred to a new school because of this neckbeard. I'm a bi-male. A lot of people knew that at my old school, and were just generally okay with it. Now my main friend group were all girls. They knew almost every freshman in our school, so my name was known a lot too. One day in about December, I was waiting with one of my friends for the bus. I personally rarely took the bus, but I wanted to take the bus with my friend home because of her neighborhood. Her neighbor and friend cut class, so it was just us. Out of the blue, this big 200-plus pound Asian guy comes up. He's a weeb, anime club member, and collector of weird anime shit. He came over to us and made small talk. He was openly bi too. This wasn't our first formal meeting, but it was the first time in a while that I'd seen him. He liked me since high school started in September. He was also staring and even had conversations specifically about me to other members of the friend group. I was not aware of this till after this interaction. Nathan became flirty when I joked about a guy I liked. Apollo. I was talking about how hot Apollo was, and Nathan asked the question, "Are you gay or something?" I told him how I was bi, and he basically lit up. He became 1,000 times more chatty to me and asked for my snap. When the bus arrived, he didn't get on. As I boarded, he said something like, "See you, baby." In January, I got into a relationship with a girl, Sybil. We were very open about our relationship, and we were seen together a lot. Me and Sybil were leaving school. We stopped at her locker because she forgot her AirPods. While she unlocked her locker, Nathan walked up behind me and whispered, "Hey, baby," before squeezing on my ass. I know this is going to sound stupid, but I have a bigger ass, like it's a common joke with my friends, and I have more ass than most girls. Sybil didn't hear this, I think, and Nathan and I talked. When she was ready, I grabbed her hand and left. Now here's some funny-ass lore that makes this a big neckbeard thing. Nathan and one of my friend's boyfriends knew each other. My friend's boyfriend said that Nathan had not showered since December, we were told in mid-January. So about a week or two later, I posted on my Snapchat story, "I'll do whatever you want if you can tell me 3 things about myself." It was stupid, but I knew Sybil or an old friend would get it right. Nathan responded first. He listed off stuff that only my closest friends knew. I told him that he won, and he said he wanted a hug every day until the end of the school year. Now, considering that it was already February, I figured that it wouldn't be that bad, but the odor issue came into play. In mid-February, me and Sybil broke up, and when Nathan found out, he was elated. He texted me every day, every fucking minute about relationships, and wanted to know about me. Valentine's Day is when shit got serious. He's a year older than me, so I had 0 classes with him. Before school, when I was putting my tennis racket in my locker, Nathan walked up to me and handed me a note and walked away. The odor lingered a bit and smelled like a mix of Asian food and shit. I didn't open the note. It was obvious to what it was, so I placed it in my locker and finished putting away my stuff. So on Valentine's Day, the school offered a service in which volunteers ran around to different classes and delivered flowers to students. The flowers were purchased in the week previously. During 8th period, one of my friends, Maleficent, delivered flowers and a note. I placed the flowers and note in my bag without even looking at who they were from. After class, I grabbed my jacket and racket and walked quickly out of school. After practice, I stopped at the Dunkin' by my school for a drink. In the chair in the back of the Dunkin' was Nathan. I got into line and tried to not get his attention. He was nose deep in work like normally. As I stood in line, my phone started to vibrate. Nathan was texting me on Snapchat. His texts were something like, "Turn around, I'm behind you," which is creepy as fuck to say to someone. I didn't turn around. I continued to wait in line and just ordered when it was my turn. As I walked out of the Dunkin', I felt a tug on my arm. Behind me was Nathan. He was tugging on me and tried to take me back inside. I tried to get free. He tightened his grip and started to talk. "Come on, baby, I want to talk to you so badly," was the shit that started to throw me off. I pulled forward and got free. I stupidly didn't make a scene or anything and just left. I dumped the flowers. If my parents saw them, they'd know something was going on, and it would have been an instant game over. When I got home, I opened both notes. I first opened the one from the flowers. One day we'll be the Qs. His last name starts with a Q. Then I opened the second note. He had some nice paper. I think he saved it from an advisory period a week prior. We did an activity where we made appreciation letters from pink paper for someone. On this paper, he had a long paragraph that was along the lines of, "I know you're the one," and "You can't reject me," and "I'd do something serious if you rejected me," and then closed it out with, "Will you go to the dance with me?" Now, I'm not a social gathering guy. Dances were always something I want, but not with someone like him. Apollo texted me later. He saw my note and wanted to go to the dance with me. I happily accepted and texted Nathan saying that I have a date to the dance. He responded right away with Snapchat voice messages, with a lot of crying, but from what I could understand and remember, he was crying about how I led him on, and that someone with a personality like his shouldn't get rejected. Honestly, I stopped listening to his shitty rambling after an hour and just put him on silent. The dance is my favorite part of this. During the dance, I caught Nathan glancing at us from across the gym. Apollo went to the bathroom before the slow dance. My girlfriends were there with me, but they had their own boy problems. Nathan walked across to me and had the worst interaction ever. "Hey, OP, can I have the next dance?" That dance is for Apollo. "But you should dance with me instead." "Nah, I'm good." Nathan stormed off after more shitty back and forth that consisted of, "But I want to dance with you," and me saying, "Nah, I'm fine." Now, me being an asshole, I kissed Apollo right in front of Nathan during the dance. He was attempting to talk to me, so I grabbed Apollo's face and kissed him. The Sunday after, I woke up with 5 Snapchat texts from my friends. They were all texting me about how Nathan wanted to kill himself or get rid of Apollo because of the dance and a kiss. To be honest, I didn't really care. If he was going to kill himself over some guy, it's not my problem. The thing is, he was a bit of an over-exaggerator. He's done this before with other people, apparently. I can't back up the claims, but it's what I've heard from friends that went to school with him. Here's the stalker saga. Me and Nathan didn't talk after the dance. When COVID hit, however, he started talking to me again. It began to get sexual. He'd compliment my ass and would ask for nudes a lot. If I said I was in the shower, he tried to video call me from Snapchat. When my birthday hit in late March, he asked for my address because he wanted to send me a gift. I declined respectfully and we stopped talking for the rest of the day. The day after, though, while I was out at the store, he texted me about my location. Something like, "I live near the Sam's Club you're at. I kinda want to meet up." From March to May, he'd make comments about my location. When I went on a mini getaway to Lake Geneva, he said that he "want to get married to you there." That was the last message he sent before I stopped responding for a week. Conclusion. When I announced in my story that I was transferring, Nathan said that he would make the shittiest comment ever. He said how he wanted to pick me up every day after school and take me back to his place and have fun. That was literally the last text he sent me before I blocked him. 2. This was several years ago in my college days. There was a group of us who'd hang out in the student union building, and a smaller group that got together outside of school. Usually we'd just talk, listen to music, draw, play on our Nintendo DS's, or if you were me, read. Not a lot of doing our coursework, but I could rely on 1 or 2 of the guys to help me with my math, which I'm awful at, and trade them for reviewing any papers they had to write. We were a fairly even mix of guys and girls, maybe a few more guys and girls, but no one really cared, and outside of me and my boyfriend, no one dated inside the group. There was one boy in our group, Goldie, who was younger than the rest of us. Goldie had been homeschooled, and was a bit socially awkward, but he was mostly sweet and a bit nerdy. The girls of the group were a bit protective of Goldie and had a very mothering big sister vibe with him. Enter Neckbeard. Neckbeard was a skinny, pale woman with limp, dirty blonde hair, and an often sour expression. She'd met Goldie in a class they'd shared and latched onto him. At first, we accepted her into the group. She was a bit annoying, but we chalked it up to her being a bit socially awkward. She began to get progressively more possessive of Goldie. She glared if any of us sat near him. She tried to sit in his lap once, which made him visibly uncomfortable. She asked him over to her house, and when he declined, his parents wanted him to come home directly, she threw a bit of a fit and stalked off. Goldie came to me and our friend Juno to ask for help. He thought maybe he'd done something wrong, but he also told us how uncomfortable she made him. We, big sisters that we were, told him that he hadn't done anything wrong, and offered to be there when he told her to leave him alone. Neckbeard did not take that well. She tried to stay in the group, even just at the fringes, but even the guys who were usually more laid back began to ice her out. She left us and Goldie alone, and we thought that was the end of it. Hope springs eternal, right? The real end of it came a few weeks later. I was sitting at a table in a smaller room attached to the student union, book and notebook open to actually work on some coursework for once. Neckbeard came up behind me and declared, "That's my chair," as if we were in 3rd grade. I reverted to the tired and true response of, "I don't see your name on it," and went back to my notes. If I ignore her, she'll go away. Then I felt it. Her skinny arm went around my shoulders and moved towards my throat. I don't know what survival instinct kicked in just then, but I flipped her onto the table, and a note about me, I'm a 5'4" at the time, maybe 110 pounds girl, whose upper body strength is that of a couch potato. There were 2 screams, hers and mine. The room attendant only saw her hitting the table, and he immediately phoned campus security. She tried to tell him tearfully that she was just trying to give me a hug. Security was having none of that. He knew me from a few previous incidents with Neckbeards. She was banned from the building for the rest of the quarter. I was asked to stay out for a week, which was fine. It was nice weather, and our group moved outdoors for a bit. Eventually Goldie told his mom about Neckbeard, after she tried to follow him home one day. It was then that we discovered Neckbeard was in her 30s. For the record, Goldie hadn't yet turned 17. We never saw her after that. 3. The characters are me, a 5'4", 19-year-old woman of about 110 pounds, with collar-length hair, light brown to dark blonde hair. Delilah, a 5'10" or 5'11" brick of a woman with short grey hair and sturdy cane, aged somewhere around the mid-50s. Sinatra, our gay and lesbian lit teacher, so named for his blue eyes and grace. Thing 1 and Thing 2, scrawny little jerks with some seriously backward ways of thinking. So every spring quarter our college had a gay and lesbian literature class, where we not only read books relating to the course but had in-depth classroom discussions about the culture. There were usually 1 or 2 people taking the class to get a better understanding of the gay community, usually because someone close to them had come out of the closet. But they were respectful, and the class was a genuinely safe place to discuss things. There were only 12 of us. It was never a large class. And that semester the class was being held in a building on the outskirts of the campus. It was one of the smaller and lesser used buildings, and you had to cross a parking lot to get there. It had a nice patch of grass, and sometimes we had class outside. This may be how Things 1 and 2 first learned of our class. After a few weeks, the things began hanging out in the parking lot before and after our class to insult us. It was mostly crude jokes and invitations to see what a real man could do. They were always careful not to say these things when any of the professors were around, and they didn't say them to everyone in our class either. They targeted Delilah, me, and another girl who sometimes walked with us. Now Delilah is dyslexic, and her note-taker had dropped out near the start of the class, so I'd taken over. We'd often discuss the class or the reading while we walked. Her partner read her the books at home. They'd interrupt with their cringy comments, and we'd ignore them. Delilah had come to her sexuality late in life, and had grown up in a very do-not-engage kind of era. I took my cue from her. This only seemed to enrage the cretins, and they began to get bolder. They'd get closer to us. Their humor became cruder. They told me all I needed was a real man, and I wouldn't want fake ones anymore. I did respond to that one. I have a real man, and my boyfriend could bench press both of you. They didn't like that and backed off for a day or 2. Then they were right back at it. This went on for weeks. I filed a complaint with campus security. Nothing happened. We found out later that the secretary had misplaced it. She was promptly sacked. It wasn't the first time she'd done such things. Then the day came when Delilah broke her rule of do not engage. Thing 1 had been getting steadily closer to us on the way out of class, and he grabbed me from behind, thrusting at me, while Thing 2 snickered. Smack! Delilah's cane whirled into the boy's back. In a voice of thunderous, glorious rage, she demanded, "Let her go now!" Thing 2 tried to rush in and went into the gravel when the broad base of Delilah's cane hit his stomach, and he slid onto his butt. She told me to go, and I ran towards our classroom, where Sinatra would be talking to some students and going over things. I was breathless and crying. I always cry when I'm angry. I hate it. I said I was assaulted, and they were attacking Delilah, and both Sinatra and the rest of the students rushed outside, except for Madrigal, a mid-30s woman who was extremely sweet and motherly. She stayed with me to try and calm me down. Thing 1 hadn't learned his lesson, apparently, because he pulled a pocket knife on Delilah, yelling slurs, and she had fractured his arm when he came at her. That cane was a heavy, hollow steel monster. Sinatra pled Delilah's case to the dean, so she got to stay on campus. Thing 1 and 2 were expelled, but there was security in the parking lot after that, and Sinatra's class the next spring quarter was moved to a more central location, and has stayed there. I didn't hear from Delilah after classes ended. I think she was only there for that class, but wherever she is, I wish her well. 4. Players: me, 5'4" female, 120 pounds, of hourglass figure, with dark blonde hair and glasses. Jensen, 6 feet of large and in charge, muscular under the fat, a bit of a beard himself sometimes, but generally a teddy bear. He's one of my good friends, and one of the main reasons I'm into RPGs, role-playing games, like D&D and Exalted. He's lifted me out of my hermit-like tendencies, and often stops at small comics and game shops on the way to our Saturday night game. Magnus, the shop owner, a pretty cool dude if you're into nerdy things, who can remember most of his inventory but not where it is. Tallbeard, a neckbeard who'd made a habit of harassing me in college, like someone I had hoped to never see again. Tall, skinny, with pale, pallid skin of someone who never sees the sun. Stringy, dark hair in need of a cut and a wash. His acne has cleared up some, but he was still greasy, and sporting the scraggly wisps of hair on his chin he likes to stroke, leaving Cheeto dust stains on both his chin and the hem of his shirt. Jensen and I walked into M's shop late one afternoon, so Jensen could pick up some comics and books he'd ordered. I was browsing the dice, basic stock, nothing very pretty, and had just gone around to check out the Munchkin and Flux packs. These are on a rack by the door, and you can't get around if someone else is standing there. Magnus' shopfront is tiny. The doorbell jingles, and I glance up before immediately going to stand near Jensen. "Hey babe, can I have the keys?" "I think I'm just going to sit in the car," I say, getting cuddly. This tips Jensen off to a problem because while we've always been friendly and often hug, we're not romantic with each other. Instead of saying sure and handing me the keys, he asks, "What's wrong?" It's then that Tallbeard approaches the counter with his bag of comic books. I'd done a fairly good job of hiding behind Jensen, who started fishing out his keys. Tallbeard sets the bag on the counter. I hear Magnus sigh. "I'm only paying half price for them," Magnus states. "You can take cash or trade or put the amount towards your purchase." Tallbeard tries to argue as I edge around Jensen with the keys. It's then that he spots me. "I didn't know they let sluts in here," Tallbeard says to me. It's not the worst thing he's ever said, and I wonder if he's lost his edge. I ignore him in favor of getting to the car. He steps into the aisle in front of me, blocking my path. "I was talking to you, bitch!" I freeze and feel Jensen gently guide me back with a hand on my shoulder. I hear Magnus say, "That's enough, Tallbeard." "Do you know what this bitch did to me?" he continues. I'd gotten him and his sidekick thrown off campus for a semester when they were verbally harassing me to physically assaulting me. It's not like the faculty hadn't warned them before. I'd also, with help from a few other girls, gotten Tallbeard's meek and very put-down girlfriend to break up with him and helped her gain some confidence. Sweet girl. "I don't care, Tallbeard. I don't want that language in my shop," Magnus states. It's now that Tallbeard sees Jensen. I can see the wheels spinning. Jensen's hand is still on my shoulder, and I am pressed against him. Now I'm not helpless, If that putrid example of grease and Cheeto dust had put his hands on me, I'd have gone for a nut shot and then kicked him in the nose. But anxiety was overriding my anger, and I really didn't want to deal with him or touch him. I'd have to wash my shoes so much. "Apologies," Tallbeard said, eyes on Jensen. "I didn't realize she was with you." He nods to Jensen. "Though I'd suggest you get tested." Jensen glares at him but says nothing. Tallbeard is so far beneath him he's not worth the energy, and he trusts me to take care of myself unless I ask for help. Plus, it's just been nasty words. Tallbeard moves towards the counter, and Magnus hands him his bag. "Get out. You can come back in a week and not on Saturdays." Tallbeard threw a fit, cursing at me and Magnus both. Then he did something supremely stupid. He swung at me. It never landed. A thing you should know about Jensen. He's worked in the mental health field for a long time. He's dealt with his share of crazies, including violent ones. And he knows how to fight. He also knows how to not fight. He caught the punch, glowered down at the grease stain, and growled out, "Out!" Tallbeard ran. He looked like he might piss himself. He left his bag of comics. Magnus stuck them behind the counter, pulled out a soda, and handed it to me. "On the house." "Thanks for the free drink, Tallbeard. And here I thought you weren't a gentleman." 5. I met Brian back in 2012 to 2013 at college. Both in the same career, though. We met and were very good friends. He even came to my house to hang out, and or do homework or work on college projects with other friends in common. However, things started to go the other way in his mind, about having other feelings for me. As for myself, I never noticed until on one of my birthdays in 2018, when he finally confessed to me. At the time, I thought it was kind of sweet. More when Brian told me his feelings for me for a while, but never developed the courage to say it until we knew each other better. I decided to not reject him, but didn't accept it either. I wanted to go slow, as this was my first in-person relationship. I'd had other boyfriends, but only online, never in person, and one ended horribly bad. Other in neutral ground, and the other in better terms, still in touch and such. Brian accepted it, and went forward. As time passed, the relationship grew. A couple of months later, when I finally accepted it, Brian started to get more touchy and kissy. I was fine with hugs and the occasional peck on the lips, but nope, he wanted full-on kisses with tongue. Even tried more than once to say things like, "That's what wives do." Or this time, when he told me about a group of friends on Discord he played an online game with that one of them told him that's what he does with his own wife. Which I wasn't comfortable with, and putting his hands on my hips and legs even if I politely brush him off. After a while he'd come back on it. This even went further when Brian literally tried to lift me up. Mind you, I'm a chubby gal, so I was not used to being carried like a child, since I was like 4 or 5 years old. And he wasn't exactly really strong, really tall, yes, but pretty skinny and not much muscle to support me. So I laughed nervously as I told him to put me down, and never, ever do that again. I rant on him how unsafe that was and so on. Thankfully, that was a one-time occasion, but the Neckbeard stuff came a bit in between. Some stuff I found out during a planned hangout, and he came to my place along with a couple of movies that I wasn't able to watch from last year, an anime we both wanted to watch, and a couple of others he'd recommended. Downloaded some hentai mangas. Previously, we'd exchanged some mangas and comics, some Sonic comics on my part, and he came with these. It wasn't that weird, since I knew he read it sometimes. I did tell him I read them occasionally when I was bored, though I was looking for more interesting not-safe-for-work stuff with a story, and not just fudge everything you see with a kitty. Though we exchanged some. Choices I've never guessed. Most of them were these really chubby and big-chested girls, no problem with that. However, these women were having relationships with underage boys. Even some have really underage girls that looked like first school graders with adults. Again, I myself was a bit chubby, but also don't look my actual age. I look quite younger, probably like 14 or 15-year-old now. So these mangas took me to an uncomfortable place, like he wanted me to be like the women in these fantasies. The night before the last day we talked, he mentioned some things we were doing, things like a married couple and such. My mom was out doing something, and I didn't mention any of the stuff I was uncomfortable with. I just brushed it off and didn't say anything. Brian kept on going that he'd recently got his passport approved for another country group. Part of his family is from there. So he was basically a civilian there as well, and told me in a whisper that I could get his citizenship when I married him. Like it was decided already. And it was just about a year. But most contact in person stuff was very brief, and at the time, I didn't put my finger on those feelings. I was actually uncomfortable whenever he tried to touch or kiss me, but thought, this is what couples do, so let it happen. Something else I wasn't able to bring out was his smell. I don't know if he bathed regularly or not, or if he was aware of it, but Brian always seemed to smell like sweat, even indoors with the air conditioner at full power. Maybe the deodorant didn't work its magic, or he was using a cheap one, I had no idea. But it was really awkward to sit close to him, or worse, insisting on sitting on top of him, like his lap or his crotch. Fortunately, nothing sexual happened there, and thank goodness it didn't. Now, please don't get me wrong. I know people can have some hormonal problems with their body odor. I have that myself, but heavily under control. I probably should have said something, but thought it was just me being too sensitive for my own good. I'm a bit hypersensorial. Like my hearing and smelling, for example. Those strong smells or really loud noises make me really uncomfortable, and can even give me some low-level anxiety, as my stomach closes and I feel really ill and quenchy. So anyway, after something unrelated to us as a couple, but having some major irreversible damage to myself and my family, we went our separate ways. I let him know we could not keep talking and cut contact from everywhere completely. After analyzing profusely his whole behavior recently, I came to the conclusion that he was a major creeper and possibly a low-key pedo, or just someone with a sickening kink for small, young-looking chubby girls. Brian waited almost 6 or 7 years to confess to me, just looking in my direction and thinking who knows what to himself about me, and what we could be with just 1 year and barely even any in-contact face-to-face. At least this first fail made me realize how to better set my boundaries going forward with another future partner. To say what I feel, and in the right way in the moment, and not let it build up. So learn from this, watch the red flags, and don't stay if they're really creepy. And if you feel in danger that you can't speak your mind, look up for help to back you up. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Neckbeards in the Wild, number 53. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories and sent in stories for use in this video. If you have a story yourself you'd like to send in, be it Neckbeards or otherwise, then please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. Well, I think we might be heading well and truly out of the summer now. Went to bed last night. I only had to put one fan on to keep me cool. Usually in the hotter weather I tend to have two, but although I've generally got one always going year-round. Might not have on full power, but I do like they are circulating in the room. Which reminds me, I'll need to step out the house on Monday. I should be okay by then, and top up my gas and electricity because they're running low. Okay, and with that exciting news, I'm gonna head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.